let me kickstart by first of all saying thank you, Ivan. Thank you very much for being a part of this podcast. Um, as you know, I've been doing a series of podcasts with people that I trust, people that I feel comfortable with. And we've done a bunch of podcasts, and these could be with clients, these could be with fellow trainers. And these are also with participants that have actually attended my programs or have been involved with me in some way or the other. So I remember I reached out to you just as you were leaving Okada, coming back to Taiwan, and we had said that we'll kind of target around this time. So I'm glad we're actually going through with this. Thank you very much for being on the podcast. Ivan, I'm going to ask you to just very quickly give a little brief about yourself so my listeners can know who you are, what you've done in the last few years, and how it has evolved into whatever you're doing right now. And it'll also give me a chance to get more updated with what you're doing right now. So thank you for that. As you all know, my name is Raju. I'm a trainer. I'm the CEO of EHP Hong Kong, which is Enhancing Human Potential. Moving on from there, Ivan, all over to you.
All right. Also, Raju, thank you. I also want to thank you for inviting me onto this podcast. This perhaps is the first podcast of my very first podcast. So this is quite interesting. But again, thank you for this experience and thank you for inviting me again. So to start off, my name is Ivan Lin. I was born in Taiwan. However, I immigrated to Canada with my family ever since I was 10 years old. And then after I took my college in East Coast, Canada, and then I also worked some years as well as in Montreal, Canada. And then throughout here and there, my major was always in hospitality industry. So then after Montreal, I studied in Switzerland for my degree. Then from there on, I worked in different, of course, from already after college years, I already have here and there a bit of experiences in terms of like chain hotels, Sheraton, Hilton, Marriott, onwards. Then I worked in the Winter Olympics area in the Vancouver
Nice.
around that time. Then I went also as well, had a bit of experience in the Beijing Olympics, volunteering as representative of my House of Switzerland from my school.
Excellent.
And after that, I came back to Taiwan, stayed quite a few years, got settled, and also worked in hotels and got more affiliated with resort hotels, Japanese brands. Then onwards, I went back to Canada for a little bit. Then from that part on, I shifted a little bit on my focus in terms of my job because I was in the hotel industry for so many years and restaurant. I started to think that I want to do a little bit different things because I've shifted throughout different places for so many years in terms of the fact that I was never really able to advance.
Right.
Because, in the service industry, if you ever want to advance, it's always important that you stay in that certain place for a certain amount of time.
Right.
However, I was never able to do that because of the personal reasons of my own focus. I wasn't able to really focus on one position for too long, but mainly it's because of primary reasons, personal reasons, my family or relationships and this and that. So then eventually I shifted into different industries, security and surveillance. I shifted to renovations, and like there was so much different things that I got involved with because of my friends trying to grab me, to work with them and stuff like that. It was actually quite interesting because I learned so many different things. Because throughout the years that I was in the service industry, I was so used to all the basically like the fundamentals, everything, if you want to talk about communications, no problem. If you want to talk about simple listening skills, no problem, because that's all I ever done. Even doesn't matter if it's through my my boss, my peers, my subordinates. It's just it was nothing new, and that's why I got bored, and I
Right.
really wanted to do something else.
Right.
So then now up to now, basically, I as you have said, we were in the Philippines, so I worked in Okada as a more of a service, then kind of like back into the service thing, but as well as it was really interesting in terms of the fact that it was a different industry, not like the hotel industry,
Right.
and the clients are very different, as we all know. And
Yes.
so it was quite a fun experience. Now being back to Taiwan, where everything started, like this is where I'm from and everything. Uh, and I totally jumped into a very, very different field again. And now, but still, I think all it came down, which is really one of the purpose of this podcast with you, and
Ye-
some of the questions I'm gonna about to have for you,
Yeah.
it comes down to communications because it
Right.
doesn't matter where I go, um, where I am, what cultural difference that I'm trying to blend into.
Right.
There's always a difference between how I will be communicating and how other perceives me trying to communicate with them, and whether or not if they take it as something that they can accept, or it's
Right.
something that they just simply cannot understand.
Right.
So I now work in a conventional industry in Taiwan as in one of the logistic company. Uh, Basically, we are a distributor for crockery and hardware store, and it's been 4 decades in Taiwan. So it's
Right.
been in for here for quite some time, and yeah. So that's long story short of what I've been, where I came from, what I have been doing, and what I'm doing now.
Okay. Fantastic. Obviously, based on that background you just mentioned, it's interesting to note that you've jumped in so many different jobs, and it's always been because your friends are trying to get you in to work with them. So that obviously shows that you have a very strong network of people around you, friends and connections. That's always a good sign. That's always a positive. And what you mentioned about the, perceptions of other people communication, I mean, that's one of the reasons I wrote my book, The P Factor, The People Factor, was because people are the most complicated subject on earth. I mean, you could
Absolutely.
know someone or you think you know someone, and they could turn around in one afternoon and surprise the hell out of you. So, so I mean, that's people for you. And that's why it's very important for us to have that stability. You also mentioned the stability factor in the hospitality industry. If you stay long enough in a place, there is a chance for you to move up in the career ladder. But if you jump around too much, then obviously it kind of cuts off that opportunity for you. That's also a big fact in life. So I guess that's informational. Thank you so much. There's a lot of stuff that you mentioned in there that I didn't realize. I didn't realize you had gone back and forth so many times, to Taiwan and other places. So, and that you've had so much experience with multiple industries, which is, oh, again, always a positive. It's never a negative because you get to understand all different kinds of businesses. Maybe not become totally immersed or professional in it, but at least you have an idea, an overview of what those businesses are, which always helps. It's common sense, helps you with general knowledge as such. So I'm gonna pass it back over to you. You decide. You let me know what are some of the questions you wanted to ask? What are some of the topics or discussions that you wanted to have? And we can do that right now.
Right. So as you have mentioned, because of somewhat a little bit of vast like options of industries that I've actually been involved in, uh, there's been so many different types of people that I've tried to communicate to, issues that I've tried to address, because of, before, if it was hotel, it was so easy, it was so comfortable. It was like, like every day I'm doing the same things, even if it's handling the bosses and stuff like that. It's all just instincts already.
Yeah.
But when it came to a different industry, handling like different issues with different people, then
Right.
I was starting to learn different things and I really loved it. But then
Right.
basically throughout all the years I've worked in different industries, as well as back in the hospitality industry, I find that the factors influencing individual communication skill, it really contains like cultural influences, social
Yes.
status,
Yeah.
knowledge and experience, personal background, and most importantly, all the things that I've just mentioned, it's all affecting one another, but
Yeah.
it all comes down to one thing. It's personal values and
Yeah.
beliefs.
Yep.
Because all those build to the personal values and beliefs of each individual. And that is the one thing that you can't really tackle it. You have to just blend into it. The podcast that you have with Dr. Ashton, you mentioned about sales, the idea of
Yeah.
selling. So it's not telling people that, oh, this is what must be for you. It's you got to convince them by telling them what is beneficial for them.
Right.
So it's the personal values and beliefs. It's something that is so strong. It's so solid that if you
Yeah.
want to tackle it head on, most often you would fail.
Yeah.
But if you have to sell it in terms of, after maybe you get a little bit closer to them, doesn't matter if it's your boss, your peers, your subordinates, what methods you use, then maybe they'll soften up. Like this is
Yeah.
the part where I've learned throughout so many years that doesn't matter who it is, doesn't matter what the issue is. It always comes down to the amount of time and the amount of attention that you pay towards this issue that you're addressing with them. If you're
Right.
not paying enough attention, if you don't pay enough respect to that process, you will never be able to really
True.
try and sell as what you have said.
Very true.
So I think basically my question starts off with the fact that this, by the way, of all of what I've said above and as well as what I'm about to say, this is my personal beliefs because I believe that everything that I've learned throughout the years, it's my own experience. So it's
Yeah.
my own belief. So I don't say this in terms of fact. I believe this is always a generic sense.
Right.
Listening skill, I think it's the part and also the start of the biggest part of a most effective communication process. Yet it's
Agree.
often neglected as being the most crucial part of it
Yeah.
because one or more side of the communicating recipient will always believe that they know the whole context of the message already before
Beforehand.
they
Yeah.
before the
Exactly.
message was like maybe finished or before it was fully delivered. So
Yeah.
I don't know how many times you in the past when you try to talk with someone and they before you even finish what you're about to say, they already interrupted you. You know
Yep.
what I mean? They
Yep.
already said,
Yep.
yeah, I know what you said. I know what you're talking about. Hey, yesterday when we talked, yeah, I already know. Yeah, I already handled it. So
Yeah.
you know what I'm talking about? So the Mr. Chen, his problem's handled. Oh no, I thought you were talking about Mr. Wong. Oh, who's Mr. Wong? You know what I mean? Like this kind of thing is
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
really,
Yeah.
really common, and
Yeah.
the reasons really vary. It's I just found it so interesting that throughout the years I've worked in, this just appeared more and more and more and more. And as my age gets even, like gets to that part on whereby I start meeting the higher managements and stuff like that, you'll find that most people don't have the time or patience to
Yeah.
really, really listen. And they
Yeah.
just don't. They just don't want to finish
Well,
listening what you're saying.
it's interesting that you're saying they have no time. Actually, it's deeper rooted than that. Here's my thoughts on some of the things you mentioned. First of all, people do have a tendency of jumping to assumptions and conclusions. All right, they do. A lot of the times, it's not necessarily to do with the timing they have, but it's more to do with the ego or face issue. They want to, when they're talking to you, they want you to feel that, oh, wow, this guy really knows his stuff, or this guy. So I'm trying to keep face. I want to make sure even before you finish, it's like, yeah, I understand it, because I'm so experienced. That
Right.
face issue is very important. One of the golden rules we always drum into training is that on listening is listen to understand. Don't listen to reply.
Mm-hmm.
Because you will find 9 out of 10 times people are listening to reply. And that's where everything breaks down because you have to give the other person the benefit of the doubt. Imagine not everyone is a clear communicator. So if I'm going to listen to reply, I'm replying to something that you said, which I thought you meant. And
Yes.
unfortunately, that wasn't what you meant, maybe because you weren't clear enough, right?
Yes.
So that's one thing. Secondly, we talk heavily about, especially in the sales programs, but we talk heavily about needs and wants. Ivan wants something. That doesn't mean Ivan needs it. And I think as a person communicating with you, I need to understand more about, okay, if this is what you want, why is it that you want it? What's something that is driving that want or that desire? And if I can understand that, then it'll help me to get to the root of your requirements and help me to answer your question a lot better. So those are a couple of the principles. Listen to understand, don't listen to reply, don't assume. I mean, most people are jumping to conclusions half the time. And unfortunately, you have to keep telling them, whoa, whoa, hold on. Maybe I wasn't clear enough. Let me explain it again. Because I certainly cannot tell them, hey, Ivan, no, you didn't understand me, because that's a direct insult to him. So I can't say, Ivan, you didn't understand me. I have to go around the other way and say, hey, listen, sorry, Ivan, maybe I wasn't clear enough. Let me see if I can put it in a slightly different way. All right. So that's the more diplomatic approach to trying to get your point across again. And also to help people to be a little more patient in listening to you rather than jumping to conclusions all over the place.
I totally agree to a certain extent, but then this comes to the part whereby I really wanted to ask that, how do you how can you consistently convey your message when you're trying to talk to different people, of different backgrounds, of different industries, and that's really the thing that I'm struggling with right now, actually, even with my current position, because I'm hired as a executive managing director.
Right.
And yet when I try to communicate with the relevant personnel or on existing issues, I discover that the cultural influence, especially right now, one of the stuff that I was saying was a major factor. It's a huge thing that's affecting what I'm trying to do right now, because one of the key character of conventional industry is that they don't really have SOPs, at least from my end.
Okay.
I actually looked online. I tried to look up a bit more info about this. I found that conventional industry in the United States is something like agriculture, manufacture, but in terms of that, they have a lot of SOPs. They do.
Yeah.
But where I am right now, that's completely like
non-existent.
It's non-existent. It's like you just come into it, you do it. If you're wrong, you'll get bombarded with insults or like just negative comments.
Right.
Then as time goes on, you'll learn. Then then you'll just get better and better. But there's one other thing it hurts the most, is that the company hierarchy it's lateral. It's not vertical. So it's like the boss and all employees, rather than a hierarchy tree whereby there's like boss, there's management, and there's that kind of communication flow. But though there isn't, because all the employees right now from where I'm working with is that they're just, all they listen is the boss. Everything else that they listen amongst each other, they will just make sure that if it works, it'll work. If it doesn't work, then we'll see how it goes. And nobody pays like real attention. Nobody is serious enough to try and solve the problems, because they don't really care. So and there isn't a structure whereby people are communicating, saying, hey, how can we do this, so whereby in the future it just the problem just doesn't surface again. They don't care. Like, it's that problem of personal values and beliefs whereby it's built upon all the factors that we mentioned.
Right. I think if I had to give you a piece of advice on this, my advice would be this. Before you try to communicate anything to anyone, All right. And I understand there's always going to be the cultural aspects of it. That is totally understandable. But no matter who you're communicating to, whatever level you're communicating to, first of all, you need to ask yourself this question: what is my key objective for communicating? What do I want to achieve from this communication? Because usually there are a couple of reasons why people communicate, and that's what we talk about in the professional world. All right, I'm not talking about personal life, right? In the professional world, we communicate to inform people of something, or we communicate to convince them about something, or we communicate because we want them to take a certain action, right? So to inform, to convince, or to move them to a certain piece of action. If you have clarified that it's very solid and clear in your own mind, then you need to think about the next important question is, for my audience, the people that I'm talking to, what's in it for them? What's the benefit for them? Because honestly, if there's no benefit for them, it doesn't matter what you say, they're not going to listen to it. And they're certainly not going to be responsible or committed, which is what was one of the pain points that you just mentioned, is like they don't seem to care. That's because they don't feel that they're getting any benefit out of it, right? So they need to know immediately, okay, what's in it for me? So it's going to save me time. It's going to make my life easier. It's going to do this. It's going to do that. Okay, now I'm much more interested in listening to your piece of advice and moving forward with this new approach. The concept of trial and error, which is the normal style that they've been doing for so many years, that is ingrained into the system. So that's not something that you're going to change overnight. Having an SOP is great, but because these people are not used to having that, they're so used to doing, let's try it and see, and if it doesn't work, we'll try again, right? So that is more of a cultural issue that has been ingrained. Don't even bother trying to change that right now, because it's too big an issue to try and change within the short span of time where you're trying to get something done quickly. All right. So principle number one is know your key objectives. Principle number two is think about what's the benefit to your audience. If you can clarify that in your own mind, then communicating it becomes a lot easier. And then when you communicate, use the KISS principle. Do you remember the KISS principle? Keep it short and simple, because the shorter and simpler it is, the more it hits and connects with them. Otherwise, they get totally jaded and confused, and then they go, no, this is not for us. So, again, it needs to hit where it hurts most. So give it to them where there's a clear benefit for them, or sometimes there's a clear consequence for them. So if they don't do this, this is all the issues or problems they might end up having. And people usually wake up when they hear things like that. And that was our approach for selling. If you don't dig a hole, they're not ready. There's no urgency. So no responsibility, no commitment. I don't need to move right now. I'll see how it goes. Right? So those are the basic principles behind it. If you want to create that responsibility or create that commitment, you used a very strong word in terms of personal values and beliefs. Again, that is something that you're not going to be influenced, in a work environment over a short period of time. So I'd much rather you go use the dirty word of what's the benefit for them, or what's the problem that they could face. So if you go into those areas, that will help kind of form new perceptions and beliefs for them in future. I mean, think about it. When we were children, our parents always told us, hey, honesty is the best policy. Right? But this was just a statement that they kept saying. And all around me, I'm seeing people being dishonest and still succeeding. And I'm going, why would I believe it? Right? I wouldn't. I hear it. It's the right thing to hear. I'm just not sure it works. So just hearing the right words is not enough. You need to see it in action. And that's why driving across the benefits and the pain points is critical in any conversation.
Yes. I definitely will try a little bit harder in terms of, understanding to get their to pinpoint, where it hurts, because this is a part where I'm really trying to hit right now.
Right.
And but I mean, coming back to the service industry, because this is one of the topic that I overheard you and Dr. Ashton talked about in the last podcast.
Yeah.
Dr. Ashton mentioned that, the service, it will come to you. Like, even when you're sitting on the aircraft, it'll come to you.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
as from the personality of the country will come to you. As
Yeah.
when you're sitting on the aircraft, you're receiving the service. That's usually how it is. And
Yeah.
I find that to be really, really like I found that to be really true, because
Yeah.
I've sat in different airlines. I've worked in different countries. I've
Yeah.
had, just a sip of coffee in different cafes in different countries, and different types of personality just portrays itself so clearly.
Exactly.
Doesn't matter where I go. And I found that to
Exactly.
be so true, and it's so sincere. Like, I just wanted to come back to this topic and say that it doesn't matter where I go, how the service itself, how the country, its people, its culture influencing the service, whereby, again, this is why it hits me the most, because this is what I learned. This is one of my major in college and even in university, and that's why I love observing people,
Yeah.
and that's one of the things that I enjoy the most. And coming back to Taiwan now, I think that it's very, very, I'm very lucky guy in terms of what kind of service I receive right now, what kind of communication process that I'm involved in right now, uh,
Right.
generically speaking, because most
Yeah.
people are very, very clear on what they want to convey, and so on and so forth. But yeah, but then it just depends on what you do, what you
Yeah.
do in terms of your work and everything else, and that's one of the challenges that I am facing right now. So that's
Right.
why I want to
Right.
kind of share and ask, what would you do about it? And I recall about the KISS methods. I recall about a lot of the things that you mentioned in the training. But I just find it so ironic that doesn't matter where I go, how in the years I've worked anywhere, most people, they will always pretend that they understand the communication process. And they
Yes.
always think that, "Hey, I know what you're talking about. I know listening, how to listen. I know how to talk. I know about eye contact, this and that." But then when you start really talking to them, it's so hard still to
Yeah.
communicate, because
Yes.
they just don't get it.
No.
And like that face issue that you mentioned, that's a
Yeah.
very, to be honest, I think that's a very Asian thing. Like, it's
Yes.
more Asian thing comparing to the Western thing, because I grew up in Canada, and we're like, oh, whatever. If I don't
Yeah.
understand, I don't understand. You can just tell me in my face I don't understand, and we'll
Yeah.
just talk it out. We'll duke
Yeah.
it out, and we'll just, our main point is to get the issue resolved. But
Yeah.
in Asia, it's more of like, huh? No,
You
I know what you're
can't, you
talking
can't,
about.
yeah, you can't tell
I know
me
what you're
I'm
talking
wrong.
about.
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about. What are you trying to say? I know what you're talking about. I just told you the answer. But in fact, the entire conversation was completely,
Yeah.
useless,
Yeah.
because,
Yeah.
you know, so it's that part of the communication process that's so interesting. That doesn't
Yeah.
matter how many people I observe, how many years goes by, whichever job that I go in, there's always different people, and there's always
Yeah.
different,
Yeah.
ways of people, how they communicate, and I think it's ongoing, and this is something that it's never gonna, like you said, it's not gonna change overnight. But it's
No,
not just about the cultural thing. It's even, well, it just becomes an individual thing.
it is. And remember what I said? I started off this conversation by saying that's why I wrote the P factor, because people are the most complicated subject on earth. That's the whole point, And you could have a conversation with one person in the morning and the same person in the afternoon, and they seem like two different people. And you're
Yeah.
going like, what the hell happened? This morning we had a great conversation, and now, that's because you didn't get your hook into the key points.
Mhm.
What affects him? What is the consequence? What is the benefits? If that hook is placed in the right place, it hurts. And when
Mm.
it hurts, he is more willing to listen to your solutions because it's hurting. And I think that's critical for all of us. And I know we keep saying, we use a lot of fancy words. We say, oh, people, it's a cultural thing. Indians are like that. Chinese are like that. It's not necessarily, if you think about it, it's very individual. It's about people. And if you understand that person, I don't care whether he's American or Chinese or Taiwanese or Indian or, whatever. If I know what is going to hurt him and I can provide him a solution that will ease that pain, all of a sudden I have an interested party in front of me. Yeah. Despite the nationality. Yes, trying to get that hook in is slightly different for different cultures. So as you said, in Canada, you might just tell him point blank that, hey, no, you didn't understand what I said. Let me explain it again. But in the Asian culture, if you tell people, that, oh, you didn't understand me correctly, it's like you just slapped my face. You insulted me. What do you mean I don't understand? So it's just a matter of maneuvering that hook, but getting the hook in the right place. Once you've done that, then everyone is all ears.
Yes, and now that you talk about this, there's a word that just came to my mind. Emotional quotient.
Yes, EQ. Yeah.
High level of EQ does not equal to high level of IQ, right? So like both does not equal to one another. So one of the things that I know where I am right now, the people are very, very keen on EQ. They think that even if you're very smart, it doesn't necessarily mean that you know how to talk to people, which I actually agree on a personal level. I do agree. But then most often, people's definition of EQ, I don't know if it's even defined on the right level, because a lot of people think that EQ just means you have to know how to handle every single types of personality wherever you go, whoever you're talking to. But I listen to it, I'm like, I don't know, this sounds like a manipulation of the word. You're taking advantage of how this is used, because for me, it's just, EQ is just how, people put it in, how do you word this? People put it into words, pretending that they know how to talk to people. But most often, I find that the people who use it the most are the people who less knows how EQ works, because they still don't really listen to people. And people put it into it's this kind of, I don't know. Maybe it's an individual thing, like you said, maybe. But for me, I've heard it more here where I am right now than anywhere else in the world, because people keep on saying that this is very relevant, that you got to have high EQ in order for you to be very smart, to know how to talk to people.
You know what's my take on EQ, or it has evolved. EQ was the initial calculation of your emotional quotient, and then it evolved into emotional intelligence, and whatever. My understanding is IQ is important because you need to have the right knowledge, but at the same time, there needs to be a balance of emotional sensitivity. So it's not a measure of emotional quotient or it's being more sensitive to the other person's emotions. And if you're able to do that, you will find that you are able to relate to people a lot more successfully than most other people. So it's just being more sensitive to emotions. In IQ, what happens is sometimes people are very process driven, and I need to get this thing done. And they just drive for that. And they actually ignore how other people might be feeling. On the other hand, you have the other extreme who are only worried about the feeling, and they never get the process done or the end results done. So it's never going to be this or that. It should always be a balance between the two. So you need to have your IQ, but you need to be able to position it with sensitivity. And if you do that, that's your emotional quotient. So any successful leader is one that is able to communicate effectively, but at the same time, see what I mentioned earlier? 35 minutes goes past very fast. Huh? That was the timer. Wow. Yeah. But I mean, we're not in a rush. We can always talk for another 10, 15 minutes. I'm fine.
Sure.
But I just wanted to let you know it actually goes past very fast. We thought 35 minutes is long.
Yeah.
Um, EQ is really just being a little more sensitive to the other person's background, the other person's issues, rather than bulldozing our solutions onto him. And
Right.
that's why I keep talking about the hook and the pain points and the benefits, because if you're able to connect those to those people, then they feel subconsciously, maybe consciously, they feel, okay, this guy really understands my pain. He understands, and yeah, his solution is actually helping me. If you can get that connection, you've handled this person effectively.
Right. And which means you have a high EQ.
You have high EQ.
Yeah,
Exactly.
right. Yeah, and that's one of the biggest character that I'm trying to possess right now in terms of
Yeah.
I don't know
But
if you
do
can even
remember,
call it.
don't go for perfection, because nobody is perfect in EQ. We
Correct.
can only get better and better. So, I mean, wherever you are, just being more aware of the fact that, okay, I need to be a bit more sensitive. I need to be a bit more emotionally connected with this person. That's
Right.
already a major thing,
Right.
right?
I think that's the biggest step that I'm trying to do right now is that I just want to pay a little bit more attention, give a little bit more time towards the individuals that I am trying to communicate to.
Exactly.
Give them the attention that they need, the time that they need, which in my own words is just simple respect. And
Yeah.
whereby I think it will improve that communication process. And I
Yeah.
know that as much as we can all listen to this and say that it's really easy, but even most often myself or even I see that other people who also tells me how highly they value the process of communication, they would even neglect sometimes. They would forget.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
that's something that I also have to often remind myself as well. So,
Right. Right. And that's why if you actually practice all the things we mentioned today is first of all, know your key objectives, connect to the other person by understanding what their challenges might be, what the hook will be, what are the key benefits that they could get, or the consequences and the holes that they could fall into, and
right,
then communicate it clearly, short and sweet, short and simple. There is a bigger chance for you to connect with them emotionally more successfully than otherwise. But we find that people either do this or they do that, and it's all life is all about a balance.
yeah,
Working hard to make money is not right. At the same time, just sitting around and enjoying life is not right.
all right.
Everything is a balance.
And that's the balance that I'm trying to do right now.
Excellent. Well, you do know how to reach me. So if you do
Yes.
come across any specific scenarios where you feel, okay, I'm going to be dealing with this person next week. Hey, Raju, can I get on a quick call with you and just, chat out a few things? Please let me know. I'm more than happy to be available, as you know, despite my travels, which I will be doing. But I mean, a WhatsApp call is easy to do, no matter which location I'm in. The
Yes.
only problem is sometimes the time difference could be a challenge if I'm in
Right.
Caribbean or if I'm in Dubai. But as long as we're able to connect in terms of having the right kind of timing set up, more than happy to sit down and have a chat with you. And it's not like you're calling me for advice. I mean, it could be I just want to throw out my
Fair.
thoughts and see,
Yeah.
I'm like a sounding board where you're
Right.
you're sounding me out, and then I
Right.
can tell you, okay, if I was the other person, I would feel not very happy, or I would feel, hey, I would be okay with that. So it's more like a sounding board rather than I don't want to come across here like, oh, I have all the answers, so I will give you all the answers. There's no
Mm.
such thing. I mean, we're
Mhm.
dealing with, again, people, and
Yes.
nobody has all the answers for that. Nobody.
Indeed, indeed. But again, this thank you very much for some of the reminders that you have right now, because I recall the past training, and it's some of the stuff you say are reminders right now. Some of the key points you also have mentioned is kind of new to me, and so I will keep at it.
Good. I think the key word here is you need to, once we finish this podcast, you need to start applying it. because that's where the balance is going to come. Knowing the concepts is one thing, and then actually applying them, trying them out, is where you will start seeing results. And you will surprise yourself when you kind of go, oh, wow, that actually worked, and that's a good thing. So.
Right. Well, thank you very much. Thank you.
My pleasure. Once again, Ivan, thank you so much for your time on the podcast. Officially, I'm going to shut the podcast down. I'm going to close it off. But like I said, I mean, feel free to connect with me on a WhatsApp or whatever, and we can always take our conversations further. But thank you very much for devoting this time and for your questions, because I think a lot of the listeners out there would probably come across the same kind of scenarios, no matter which part of the world they're in, no matter what position they're in, because dealing with people is essentially a challenging task. So I think that's a good thing.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Raju.
All right, Ivan. So we'll keep in touch. Let me know if there's anything, and hopefully I'll catch up with you soon if I get a chance to go to Taiwan in one way or the other.